first off, I want to commend you for agreeing to do this. At first, it was the heart of Manvswld podcast and our connection, relationship, and partnership with Go Talk Texas to have a tell-all exclusive 60 minutes type, expose on, youth ministry.
Yeah.
Somebody who's willing to come here, tell the truth, the whole truth, spill the tea.
Sure.
Let us know what it's really about. And we were willing to conceal your identity and black out like your face, change your voice, do the whole thing.
Yeah.
That way you can be as honest as you possibly could and even throw a few people under the bus if necessary.
Yeah.
But you were like, I don't want to do all that.
Yeah.
I'm out here. I'm out here on the line, and I'm willing to let my name and my face and image be seen so that I can go on the record before God, for God and country.
Yep.
So I want to commend you for that.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate that you were willing to do this
Man.
with us, and I can't tell you how excited we are. So we have Pastor Abarum Soard.
Yep.
Is it youth minister, youth director?
I've been called all of them.
What's your title, dog?
Youth pastor, student pastor. I go by youth pastor, though.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we've covered that, but I do have a few ice-breaking questions.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, so a toddler, a panther, a Joel Osteen intern. You have to fight one, feed one, take one for a walk. Go.
Wow. I'm a fight Joel Osteen's intern. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the easiest.
I like where you're going.
I'm gonna feed the infant, right?
I thought you were gonna fight the infant.
No. And then what's my last option? I gotta
take the other one for a walk. So you
take a panther for a walk. I'm gonna try, but I feel like that's my only options. I mean,
okay,
yeah.
Okay,
I like that. That's good.
It was just a question. It was just a question. You don't have to take it too serious. Okay, next question. And these are just icebreakers.
Yep.
Has your senior pastor ever given you a get better soon card, not because you were sick, but because he wants you to get better?
Oh, no, I've never gotten that.
Oh.
No, I haven't.
So Doug's already let me down. Okay. Would we find you featured on Preachers and Sneakers?
I mean, I have some good sneakers, yeah.
Are you a sneakerhead?
I mean, I'm wearing a pair right now.
What are you wearing today?
I'm wearing
okay, he's going to take it off, guys. Be ready. This
Jordan
is
3s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are nice, bro.
They're the cement reimagines. So they dropped last year, but yeah, I like them.
Okay, well, we'll see about getting you featured on there.
But hey, I got them on the shock drop. My wife got them for me, so
you don't have to explain
at retail. So I mean, that's a deal.
The blessing is the blessing, bro.
It is. I don't have to balance statement.
Yeah. You don't have to apologize for God's goodness.
But they put them on there like, man, look at all of this. But it could have been a gift, Who knows?
That is the truth, my man.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Why is Little Caesars Pizza the official pizza of youth ministry? Or am I wrong?
Well, so this is true. I'm not going to disagree with this statement.
Okay.
But it's not my official pizza for my youth ministry.
Oh, hold on. We're going to have a plug here.
Yeah.
What do you use?
So my go-to is Domino's. Okay. It just tastes a lot better, right?
It's a lot better. It's gotten a lot better over the years.
I feel like if you ate the Little Caesars cardboard box that it comes in and the pizza,
it would have more nutritional value.
Yeah, but they kind of taste similar too, though, So
they do. Now, do you think that Jesus is exerting dominance over the former Roman Empire by making Little Caesars the official pizza of youth ministry?
Absolutely.
Okay, it was just a question.
Yeah.
You don't take it personally, bro.
Yeah.
That's all I got. I got maybe about another 30 minutes of lightly veiled insults and questions, but they're probably not going to get us anywhere.
I love it.
Okay. So how are you?
Good.
We're
busy.
Busy? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about busy.
Yeah, I mean, we're like we were talking earlier before the podcast. I got a little boy just turned 1. Got a 3-year-old who is crazy, off the walls all the time, but I love her and I wouldn't want it any other way. But yeah, it's full steam ahead with youth ministry. That's what the topic we're on. So we have all kinds of stuff coming up, and just trying to find ways to pour in and love in and care for this next generation. So yeah, that's my life right now.
So I know that there's a lock-in coming up soon. So for those that don't know what a lock-in is, give us a brief summary, a definition of it that wouldn't incriminate you. Go.
Oh, wow. So, where I would start is I grew up in and out of the church, and I remember the first lock-in I went to, the Baptist church did it a lot, and it's, hey, show up, we're staying up all night, we're going to have Little Caesars, back to the plug, and then, we just played all kinds of crazy games, people got in trouble, people got hurt, the typical youth ministry type of stuff, and so as we were planning what's called Encounter Nights is coming up for our youth ministry where, we're just going to go a little deeper, dig in, and have times of extended worship and prayer. And I'm going to speak. We're going to have others speak. But I was like, man, what can we do? What can we do? This just off the wall, different. I'm like, whatever happened to lock-ins? Because it's like ancient,
Yeah, because that seemed like that was something more of a practice in early 2000s, 90s for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
That was the thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool. So you just was like, hey, let's.
I was like, hey,
let's just lock the doors, man, and just trap them all in here overnight.
Let's just do it. Let's go for it.
No, that's really, really cool. Really, really cool. So you guys already got that planned out, and that's on calendar. I don't. We'll see if I can wrangle my children. We may have to add into the lock-in maybe a kidnapping. Oh yeah, might be a better way.
Get your kiddos here. Yeah, absolutely.
So and you've been in your role now with Vertical for I've been about a year now. Right?
A little over a year, yeah. Okay. But youth ministry specifically is going on 8 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So how does that happen?
So how did you
just in general, how did you? Well, there's some questions in terms of, and I don't know if we want to get right into that. I thought we could probably we can mosey our way into it.
Yeah, stroll into it.
Maybe let's just get right to it.
Sure.
For somebody in ministry, one of the biggest things I found in talking to other guys, serving in various roles, is to define calling. Not just your specific calling, in terms of calling in general. What's the first thing that you think of when you think of calling? Biblically,
that's really good.
Some people think, okay, Moses in the burning bush.
Yeah, sure. There's this defining moment.
Yeah. But for scripturally, for you, when I say calling, what's the first thing that comes to your heart?
Man, well, I don't run to scripture. I think whenever I think biblically or whatever it may be, life experience, I always go to my own experience, what I've encountered, what God has done in my own life. And so when it comes to calling, I feel like if I look at my life, it's just a reflection of what God has done in other people's lives, right? That define where he's calling them or what he's calling them to or the people group he's calling them to, right? So like you said, Moses, he called him to his own people. For me, I knew the day I got saved, the day I gave my life to Christ, where everything had changed for me, which is a whole nother story.
Sure.
God made it abundantly clear to me that I was called to youth ministry. Now, the way he did that was very specific for me. Now, everyone, I feel like defining calling is based off of your own experience that God leads you into, right? And so,
well, in terms of Moses, right? Okay, so I'm a firm believer in what you're saying, that calling is absolutely personal, right? The burning bush said Moses. Yeah. So with God, it's not always just business,
right?
It's personal.
It's personal.
So yeah, go on.
Yeah. So for me, I'm standing there. I give my life to Christ, and I'm like, just God's changing me in that moment. And I remember looking up, and I see the guy who's preaching. His name's Chris Durso, big youth pastor, traveled a lot, did a lot of different conferences, and so I'm just watching. I'm watching this guy operating his gifting, his calling, and I knew in that moment God was telling me, you're going to do what he's doing. I was like, I'm going to do what he's doing. Like, what does that mean? Like, I just gave my life to you. Like, now you're telling me what I'm going to do, Lord. Like, what does this mean? And he told me, you're going to lead a generation of young people. You're gonna help disciple students. And then I didn't know what that meant. Now hindsight's always 20/20, right? I can look back and see how God has really orchestrated all of this and brought me to the place where I am, and I love it. I get to see young people walk in their calling. So my calling is being reproduced in other people.
Nice. So the thing about calling is it demands a response, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's when I mentioned, how do you define scripturally like calling? Like, what's the first thing? Like, some people, like I said, can think of Moses.
Right.
I can think of Jonah.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
What do you do when God's man, at the sound of an order, goes on the run, goes on the lam? So God's looking to reach a people, but the guy he's looking to reach a people is running the opposite direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one of the biggest grace things about that is, after that whole kerfuffle on the sea, it says, then the Lord called to Jonah a second time.
This is true.
Big grace move, right?
Yep.
That there could be a second ring, right? You didn't answer the first one, but maybe there can be another. In terms of answering a calling, what's the first thing you do? And as a matter of fact, I can think of somebody really famous that had a wonderful answer, but I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts are. When you get the calling, what do you do?
Yeah, it's good. That's a good question. You've probably heard this before. God doesn't call the qualified, but he qualifies the calling.
No, I've never heard this.
You never heard that? Wow. Well, I mean,
who's credited with saying
I don't know. I've heard it from many different people.
I've heard that put around like I'm not going to say anything crazy. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So for me, I think when it comes to that, it just tells me like, sometimes you don't have what it takes necessarily to step into that calling yet. God's just giving you a glimpse of it, right? And so for me, God gave me a glimpse of what he was calling me to. And so for some people, that could be scary. For some people, it's like, whoa, like, what does that mean? But I know that within that, there's a preparation season to get to it, right? And so I look back and it's like, oh, I see how God brought me through this, to be able to get to where I am today. Whether it was 3 years of ministry school for me or, helping with a church plant, it changed my life.
Sure.
But all of those things have developed me into becoming the person God's called me to be, to operate in the calling that he called me to. But I feel like sometimes we look at calling as if it's something we're going to arrive at one day, all the time. Like, oh, one day I'll be here, one day. And that's calling and destiny are very similar, right? And I tell my students all the time, destiny is wherever your 2 feet are. That's your calling. That's where you're at. That's where's God put you. And in that, yeah, he may give you a big dream or a big destiny, big, calling. One day, you're supposed to be a youth pastor like me. But I knew even in the seasons leading up to that, my now led to my next. And if I didn't get the now, then the next wasn't going to happen until I got it, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of lessons in that. There's a lot of leading up to, like, one thing leads to another. Yeah. Yeah,
it's a lot of us think of, moving towards the thing that God's, purposed and authored. Think of it in a linear way, right? Like it's a straight line. Obviously, it's not. Just read the Bible and look at any biblical profile and narrative of somebody who's, exemplified a great life of faith. None of it is A plus B to C to D. Now, on God's side of things, it is.
Yeah.
But for us, it's kind of the hokey pokey. You put one foot in, you put one foot out, and oh my gosh, Psalm 23. I'm living in green pastures, and I'm walking beside the still waters, and then the next moment I'm in the shadow of death, valley of the shadow of death. So, knowing that you move from God has spoken, I have something. He's put something now in my heart. the next response is, a response. You have to do something.
Right.
I remember old interviewer, what was her name? Greta Van Susteren, and she was interviewing actually Billy Graham. Mm-hmm. And she said, like, what did you do, when you found out that you were to be a preacher? And first thing he did was he started actually preaching to tree stumps in the woods.
Nope.
And he would hold revivals where no one saw it, and these tree stumps were the audience that he was, beckoning and calling to get saved. And then the next thing was, he said, I began to study the Bible and then, go to Bible college and all that kind of stuff, which is those are good responses.
Yeah.
But it's a response nonetheless, right? How have you dealt with the responsibility of what you do? Is a question. I don't know. I sent James a meme. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it. Have you ever seen these memes that say, what my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what society thinks I do, and then what I actually
really
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that
I'll put it up on the screen.
yeah, if you would. So people, no, I was going to show you it just so you could see. Yeah, I was figuring I'd just show it to you too, because I thought about that. Pastor said something today about, how we actually are versus how we think we are. And then
perceive.
Perceive. Yeah. And it's true. It's true. But I think when you have a good view of that, it'll change how you treat what you do.
Oh yeah.
So I sent him that, and they're going to put that. They'll put that on the screen. And I just thought it was cool. Now I've seen far worse ones, but yeah.
That's awesome. I love the last one because it's so true.
Yeah.
But what society thinks I do, that like we don't do that anymore. Like the chubby bunny.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like there was like a kid that died from that. So all of my youth pastors out there, don't do chubby bunny.
No more
bunnies. Do what is it called? I forget now. Something jalapeno chihuahua something.
So what's okay? Okay, so I've unfortunately my exposure to youth groups was very, very limited. Mm-hmm. I was stoned all the time, and I was trying to pick up on the girls in the youth group.
Yep.
So I didn't listen to anything. But there would be times where the youth pastor would get a bucket and pour soda, create this weird cocktail of God knows what. And then do you dare me to drink it? Or figure out who has faith amongst the group.
Yeah.
And who's going to lose their lunch.
Yeah.
Have you done this?
I have not done that.
You've not done that.
No, I mean, when I go to Taco Bell, I mean, I would do the.
Will you pray about
the
it?
suicide where you put every soda in there, but I never did the concoction.
Yeah, the concoctions are kind of funny. It's kind of like I don't know what. Depending upon how old you are, the '80s movies they always have the burnout cop who's going to save the day. He's the anti-hero.
Yeah.
5 o'clock shadow, hungover every day, and he's getting Tang and mixing coffee and all this other stuff. And he's like, "Oh, this is the only thing. That'll save me." So I want you to really pray about that.
I will. I'll pray about that for our next one.
For the lock-in.
Yeah.
For the lock-in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just make sure that you have something that's not too sensitive. Absorbent on the ground in case they decide to start barking at the carpet.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're gonna incorporate a wheel that you spin, and whatever you land on, you have to do. So,
okay.
One of my winter camps, we did a food relay where there's 4 teams, and everyone had to participate.
Hold on, food relay.
Yeah.
Because the first thing I'm thinking of is when a mama bird feeds her baby.
Yeah. So not
is that
like
what's
that.
happening?
No, not like that. That's called manomatic. So
there's a term for this.
Yeah, manomatic is when you someone says they say you want an omelet. Oh, you want an omelet? Okay, crack an egg in one mouth, and they have to mix it all up, chew it up, and it has to go into the mouth of the next person. Add a little cheese in there. That's the manomatic.
Okay,
so we didn't do that. We didn't do that. We did food relay.
Okay.
And they would run up, reach their arm in, whatever they grabbed, they had to eat, whether it was sardines, Spam, you name it.
When these things are going on, what does Jesus and the Holy Spirit do?
Oh, that's such a good question. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I guess I would imagine so many people have their idea of who God is or what he's like
Sure.
and all these things. And
I don't think he's a killjoy, but
sure. And some people are over spiritual, man, or too religious to even think that, Jesus would even laugh or cut up with the disciples or whatever. Like,
yes.
Did John really eat that, or whatever, I think they would do that, and
Actually, that is a fantastic biblical, like if you are going to have people like eat crickets or something at the lock-in, that's not even biblical. Well, as a matter of fact,
John the Baptist ate wild honey and locusts and wore camel's fur.
Yeah.
So
The original fear factor.
yeah, exactly.
The original fear factor.
Wow. That's a good term.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of something that's always intrigued me a little bit.
Yeah.
But okay, so what's the wildest thing you've ever asked of the students to do? And we can edit out later if it's really bad.
Yeah, if it's really bad. You have some of those youth pastors, they go crazy. I've never been that. Like, I've always kind of been a little like, I tread lightly.
So you rely on the anointing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ask forgiveness. I ask permission.
Okay.
I'm not the one that asks forgiveness later and just does it anyways.
Yeah.
But there's things I've had students do that I wouldn't do for sure.
That right there is that should be the viral clip.
Yeah.
I've had them do things I would never do.
Absolutely.
And we're going to need some examples of that.
Yeah, like when they're doing it, you're just like, oh man, I can't believe this is happening.
I mean, I think it mainly comes down like the eating of the nastiest stuff. Yeah. That's, or like Man-O-Matic. Like, I couldn't do that.
So my son does really dumb things sometimes. I mean, he's 16 now. He's driving. I mean, yeah, he actually takes his test officially on Tuesday.
Okay.
But he's driving now, like with me in the car. And
Nice.
I'm not praying in tongues as nearly as I used to, as we were at the start.
Yeah.
But that dude will just pick something up for no one even dared you, bro. Why are you doing this? No, like riding in the car, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, there's some goldfish here in the seat."
Gross.
I'm like, "Dude, are you for
That's
real right
nasty.
now?" And he'll go, "Bop."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Are you for real right
Yeah.
now?" He goes, "What? You got a problem?" Like, yeah. So he does a lot of dumb stuff like that. He's not even dared.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even like, "Hey, bro, I bet you wouldn't eat that."
Yeah.
I'm more like, "No, don't eat that.
Don't eat that, yeah.
Don't eat that." And he does it anyway.
It's mold on it.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe we should send him over there
Yeah.
for that. And he might have some entertainment value just for that alone. I don't know if anyone's going to be brought closer to Jesus, but
Yeah, I mean, their life may be changed. Who knows? Yeah.
so serving in this capacity, how has that changed your view on how God works? Like, you know what I mean? Like you just said, like people have this perception of God. They see God one way. They expect him to behave and be, a certain way.
Sure.
How has God surprised you in that fashion,
Yeah,
in this capacity?
Man, there's been so many things that I can think of that has really changed my perception of who God is. Because I think at the end of the day, like when our head hits the pillow, and we're thinking about the life we live, I think everything boils down to how do we perceive God? Like Jesus, is he good? Is he working in my life? Is he going to show up in this area of my life? Like, we all have these things we wrestle with or go through in life. And so when it comes to youth ministry, I think for me particularly, like I've seen God do some miraculous things. For one, like I remember when we were meeting at our pastor's house, and it was like, all right, the goal is to find somewhere else to meet. And I met one person at a wedding venue, and I was there for a baby shower. Men don't go to baby showers like that. We don't do that, right? But my wife's like, you got to go to this. And little did I know it was going to be a God thing. And I meet this.
Was it a Mexican baby shower?
It was.
I'm just okay.
It
so
was. Yes.
Traditionally,
Yes. Yep.
if you do go to the baby shower, you're in the backyard getting hammered drunk, and it's like at
Sounds
11.
about right.
It's at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay. and all the women are inside with a matriarch playing these, baby games.
Sure.
While, you signed up for a trust fall experiment with tequila out in the back.
Yeah.
That wasn't officially decided upon. It's just kind of what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I didn't mean to bring up trauma. But so you were there. It sounded like a dude. It sounded like a Mexican baby shower. You threw it out there. I was like, let me call it out.
Yeah, there was a lot of that happening.
Okay.
But what was cool is, man, I meet the owner of the wedding venue, and I'm like, hey, this space is cool. Mm-hmm. What do you think about like a youth ministry meeting here? She goes, what do you mean? And so I kind of break it down to her, who I am, what I do. She's like, come Monday, I'll have the keys ready for you. I'm like, but like how much? Like, what are we talking about? She's like, no, just come. I want you guys to be here. We want to do this. And like for me, that like was one of those defining moments in my ministry journey with Christ. And it was like, God provides supernaturally. What's even crazier though is we had a guy who had just showed up to our church, which now he's a regular attendee of our current church. But back when we were Legacy, we were planted here in Buda, and this guy named Jerry, he comes up, he goes, God's going to give you a building in downtown Buda. That was on Sunday. I go to that baby shower on Saturday, not even a week later. And we're thinking like, a church building and all this stuff, but God was like, no, I'm giving you this. Yeah. And it was perfect for the season we're in. And so like, I think of moments like that in my journey as a youth pastor of how it's really defined how I see God and how he can move.
Well, it's like, even as we're talking about this, I kind of thought about something. So I pastored a church in California for a few years.
Yep.
And we used to do this thing to outreach. We were renting a building, and we would do this outreach where like free car wash, like the church that I, kind of was formed by. They were hugely evangelistic, and that dude's like my spiritual father. At church is like, I don't know, 6,000 to 8,000 people. He would preach like, oh gosh, I don't know, 8 to 10 times a week. It was unbelievable.
Oh wow.
Well, because they had a small building, so they had multiple services. Yeah,
just turn them over.
But that brother could just bang 9 services,
no way,
and be just as anointed, if not more. So each service, and sometimes things would go crazy. But anyways, we did a car wash thing, and what would happen is church members would be washing the car. We'd be like grilling hot dogs and stuff, and just, hey, do you need prayer for anything? And there was this dude that showed up with like these crazy rims, and he pulls in, man, there's a free car wash. He's like, he was staying at the hotel like across the street, and he's like, I'm a professional pop locker, like dancer or whatever.
Yeah.
And he goes, we're hosting a pop locking contest next week. And he goes, man, I would love if you'd come and share the word of God with us just for a minute. Super nice guy. And at first it was kind of weird. Like, what do you even do with that? But you think about the fact that not only is God going to send you somewhere sometimes, but people are asking for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, you wouldn't think in a million years, why would you, we're having a secular event, but for whatever reason, this guy was so touched. He was like, man, I want you guys to come and you just, say a blessing, man, over the thing. And it's not a Christian event.
Sure.
But you have somebody who's far from God, or maybe not at the moment, but he said, come. And we went. And I think the same week, it was crazy. I think Michael Jackson died.
Oh, wow.
That same week. And I had just read something about him, saying how he did everything he did just to be like loved, which was like crazy.
Tough.
You think about one of the most beloved figures, man. And we look at him and think like, this guy's going through all this just to feel like he has value.
Wow.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, we went over there and ministered, and there were like, I don't even know, there were like 100, 150 maybe there. I mean, half the place responded to the altar call.
Yeah.
And that didn't translate to, people in our church.
Sure.
But like for a moment, you get to see the value of not only when God can send, but when God is actively working in partnership with somebody,
Yeah.
the things that can happen.
Oh, my
right?
goodness. Yep.
So like even that Jonah narrative, like we were talking about, right? God's man is on the run. The whole point of God doing what he was doing is he says that the people in Nineveh, there was a great value he had on them.
Yep.
Which is nuts, right?
Yeah.
He says, look, I have all these people and they can't tell their right hand from their left. Like there's a value there. So that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, that's
like
good.
What has God, so like you just saw God faithfully, strategically, to us it doesn't, we don't know because we don't know what he's doing half the time.
Yeah. Anybody
Anybody who purports to, I know exactly what the Lord, like just shut up.
Yeah.
You don't know anything.
No.
I think if anything we can perceive, that God is moving.
Yeah.
And we can be sensitive to that, but we never truly know the shot, right?
Yeah.
So he provided that for you guys and you saw and how perfect, right?
Yeah.
That was.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
you couldn't have imagined it or structured it any better than the way that God did it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, further on that, what do you see? What's different right now? Because I know right now we're living in a culture. I was actually going to have my kids give me a really hard question for you in their vernacular.
Yeah.
My gosh,
Oh, that's a whole nother podcast.
dude, that is. I don't know, man. Every now and again, I see a reel.
Are we getting old?
You're like,
on
can
no,
you
we're old.
decipher this for me? Right?
There was one where I'll see if I can find it. I'll send it to you. Where they're doing a biblical translation in this
I think I know this
vernacular.
one. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
I've seen several of those.
Jesus had the main character energy.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And they were just bussing. What?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
No cap.
Well, and you say even those words, you say it, and they're like, "Oh, you're so cringe." And it's
Yeah.
like,
The
Yeah.
minute I touch it, oh, cringe.
well, 'cause
Unholy.
That's 5 months ago.
That's
They have new terms now.
But
It's
see,
happening
that-
so fast.
It changes at a rate. Okay.
Well, but they're the information generation, right? It's at their fingertips. So whereas me and you growing up, like it had to take time to make its way around. Like like that was a big thing for me growing up, right?
Oh yeah, no, I lived through What's Up.
And then like that stuck around for a long time.
It did. Now,
But-
if you do it, you're like, oh,
Yeah, you're cringe. You're cringe.
You're
right?
cringe.
That's what they say.
you're cringe.
But I want to go back to something you were saying. It was really good. Where you were talking about that guy, the pop locket guy. For me, I feel like so many Christians feel like no one really wants to hear from Christians, but I feel like that's not true.
You're right.
I feel like there's so many people who are like right there, and it takes just that little bit of effort that we could try, but we don't. Because I'm a big proponent for like evangelism. I'm big on that. The Bible's big on that too.
Yeah,
Make full
maybe-
proof of your ministry by doing the work of an evangelist.
Maybe a little bit. Like
Exactly.
the Great
Great
Commission.
Commission.
Great
Yeah, come on.
Commission's not like
Yeah.
invite them to church.
Well,
Which is good. You should.
Yeah.
There's a come and see part of evangelism.
Absolutely.
We think we found the Messiah. Why don't you come and see?
Yeah. Come on.
Maybe he is.
Yeah. Well, and what I think a lot of Christians where they miss it is, for me, I remember I was standing in line at Summer Moon about to get a coffee. My wife worked there at the same time, so 2 for 1. Good to see her. And there was this guy standing behind me, wearing all black, had Satanist tattoos. This dude was just full blown satanic.
Those are
And
my favorite.
oh yeah, because I mean, like,
Most of it's an act.
God, why don't you just give me the easy guy, right?
Most of those guys aren't that scary.
Yeah, it's
They're like,
true.
oh, I have
It's
a
true.
cat. I love my cat. Like, really, bro?
Yeah.
You look like you sacrifice cats.
Yeah, exactly.
No, he's my best friend. Okay.
Well, and I don't know. Maybe he was just like a facade, but who knows? But I just started striking up conversation with this guy because I knew the Lord was telling me, like, hey, talk to this guy. And what's cool is, he asked me, like, hey, what do you do? And I was like, I'm a youth pastor. He goes, oh, youth pastor. And immediately, like, he had this idea of who I was. Mm-hmm. But then I start breaking down what I believe and why I believe it. in
and
a
then
sense,
you named your favorite death metal band, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh man,
he's like, we're bros.
this is
now.
real.
Yeah. No, I told him, but I started breaking down the difference between religion and relationship. You know, we've heard this for years, right? People have been saying this, but we got to realize there's some people who still haven't heard that. You know, that they think that religion is just religion, and that people just go to church, and that there's not this personal relationship with Christ, and that he desires that with you.
Yeah.
And when I start talking about that, I'm like, look, man, religion is just a way for man to get to God, but God came to us by giving his son to die for us so that we can have relationship with him. And you could tell he was puzzled, and he was trying to figure it out. And because why aren't you like the rest of the religious people?
That's I pay attention. My wife and I were actually talking about this earlier. You pay attention to what people say. You know, Jesus says, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." Right. So we can pretend all day long. We can act like, you know, we can be letter perfect, say all the right thing, use all the right Christian terminology, but eventually, who we really are, what we really think, comes out. Right. Anything with enough pressure. Anything with enough squeeze is going to put out some juice.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the juice will reveal the day.
Yep.
So we were talking about, you know, prayer, and you can find out really what people actually think of God if you listen to their prayer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So Jesus, majority of the time that we actually have record of him praying, it's Father.
Yep.
Right? Relationship first.
Yep.
It's not recitation,
time.
it's relationship. Then you have other people who come to God like a pauper. Like,
Oh, holy God.
well, it's not just holy.
Yeah,
dear
yeah.
God.
A pauper,
Like,
yes.
please, you
Please.
know.
More porridge, please.
And
sir.
then you have, yeah, exactly. And then you have other people who have like this servant attitude. It's like an employee and employer. You know, it's transactional.
Transactional, not relational.
You know, here's all that I am doing, or here's my favorite. I don't pray for I don't pray for myself at all. I only pray for other people. I only pray, you know, like,
Yeah.
well, you're a liar.
Yeah.
Like, why? You know, like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
But what strikes me about that is you're 100% right. A lot of us kind of walk around, you know, on eggshells, right, with the world that we live in and amongst, that is largely going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
Quickly. And you have to consider, you know, you think, well, they don't want to hear that from me, or they don't want, this is the wrong context. So I think of something my son did. Every now and again, he's very profound, and then he'll eat like a 3-year-old gummy bear from a car seat, which completely destroys any credibility he has.
Yeah.
But I go to rock shows with him. You know, I take him. We go to secular shows. They're not all skillet shows. I would have wore a Megadeth shirt here today, but it was in the laundry. But so we can have that discussion at another time. But he and I were at shows that are not Christian, and every now and again, before we go, I usually tell them, I say, look, we might be the only representation of God. Now, it's a little audacious to think we are the only.
Sure.
Like Elijah, I'm the only one left. It's like, shut up. I got like all these guys that haven't bent the kneel to Baal at all. Just quit crying.
Yeah.
The first bipolar prophet. I'm glad he's in the Bible.
Yeah.
But I would say, you know, we may be the only representation. So what we want to do is be sensitive that if God puts somebody in our path, we share with them. And so whenever he and I go to these shows, and now we have a whole band of teenagers now that we go, and they crowd surf and do the whole thing, but we're open to whatever it is that God does if
absolutely.
the opportunity is presented. But here's where it went different. So this girl starts chatting us up in between songs. I'm talking to her, and I'm kind of like just searching my heart. Okay, you know, how should I approach this? You know, and I'm just like, receive Jesus as Lord, or turn or burn, you know, get right or get left.
We've seen how that worked out.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But like, you know, so like I want it to be right. And so we were talking, and then all of a sudden she disappears. So he and I are talking about this on the way back to the car. And I said, what did you think about us talking to that girl? That girl was talking to me. He goes, yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought maybe, we're probably going to minister to her. And I said, as we were talking, I said I was kind of meditating in my heart. Maybe I'm kind of trying to listen for the Holy Spirit, right? Trying to listen to God. Yeah. I said, but I didn't feel it was urgent. And then he, without a snap, he goes, when is it not urgent? I was like,
so good.
Bro, what are you?
And then he eats the gummy bear.
Yeah, and then he's like, hey, check out this gummy bear. It's like green and fuzzy, but I think that just means it's better.
Yeah.
And I didn't know you can taste colors, Dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wrong gummy bear.
Why is everything moving? Wow. Yeah, so I have to have conversations when we visit family in California.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, before we go in there, if you guys see any gummy bears,
don't eat them.
Do not eat them.
Yeah.
They're different gummy bears. I'm going to have to put on an Alice in Chains album and kind of walk you through it. We just don't got that kind of time.
No.
So
wow.
So leading in this culture, what do you see as probably one of the, so helping people get over the idea that maybe nobody wants to hear from them or they don't want to hear the gospel.
Yeah.
Or they're waiting for the right opportunity. We're waiting for the right moment. And I don't think that there's anything, the Bible says that who is wise wins souls, right?
Yeah.
There's a wisdom.
Yeah, sure.
There's a tact to take. Not everything is a nail and you're not a hammer, and that's not how it always works, right? But what would you say is a big challenge to what you do now? Like, what would you say, like, if you've been in youth ministry for 8 years, sitting in the seat that you're in now, what is a challenge to you right now? Like, what do you see? Like, what's the thing that makes you go where you have to ask the Lord, okay, how do you want me to navigate this?
Yeah, I think for me it would be, I get students for 2 hours on a Wednesday night. And anything outside of that is a bonus. If I see them on a Sunday, great. If I go to their school or a football game and I hang out with a few of them, great. If we have a leadership meeting and, they all show up, great. But when they're not there, I have society and or parents who are not believers who are contradicting everything that I'm trying to pour into them. The culture that I know is Jesus' culture, what he established, how he discipled, right?
Sure.
We're just replicating what he did. And that can be so hard and frustrating, especially when you feel like, man, I'm making so much ground in this kid's life. And then you turn around and XYZ happens, you name it, fentanyl or whatever, some tragedy, some heartbreak in students. I've had students just come to me, and what may seem so small to me, because I've dealt with it before, is the biggest thing in their life. And it even to the extent of, like, say a girlfriend breaks up with this guy. It's like ruining his relationship with Christ because she was a believer. And so, like, there's so many things culturally, society. And I feel like one of the biggest ones is, we can go there, gender type stuff, that I feel like we're constantly battling. And for me, I just have to continue to stand strong in the midst of what does God's word say, what is truth. And then it's not even about saying, hey, these people are evil. It's about saying, hey, who's God called you to be? You're a son, you're a daughter. God's loved you, and that's how he made you. He doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's the biggest challenge for me lately is fighting culture, man, the culture that is of this world. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not easy to navigate.
No.
So some people, have that ostrich approach, right, to things. They rather just kind of put their head in the sand and rather than, combat it at all.
Sure.
Or you can go, David Goggins on it which may not be the most effective approach either.
Sure.
So it's kind of I'm not going to say it's a tightrope some things God in his word are very clear.
Sure.
Right?
100%.
I don't have to pray about it.
Yep.
I don't have to go, oh, well, what does God really think about this? No, I've probably got about 40, 50 verses that direct this, address this directly. And then in things that aren't so black and white, God addresses in principle.
Yeah.
So we have a principle. Maybe we don't have a direct prescription, but we do have a diagnosis of what it may be and how to maybe solve it, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I can imagine just between now and from when you started.
It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to the extent of, man, finding out like, oh, this girl is actually hanging out with this girl all the time because, oh, they're dating. And like before, I would have never picked up on that kind of stuff because I just didn't expect it, But now it's like, it's just accepted widely. And then you have to really think through like, man, how am I going to like structure this conversation? Like, how am I going to help them understand like Jesus doesn't hate you, man. He loves you. He desires you. He wants a relationship with you. But God's way is better.
And see, that's the thing too. It's like, okay, so you want me to be affirming? I'll be affirming. The only thing that I can affirm is that you're loved by God.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But
like
unconditional love is not unconditional acceptance.
And see, that's where the difference is.
Yes.
So like, I don't know, like I have substance abuse in my
sure.
own personal history, but also family, right?
Yeah.
Loving somebody and approving of what they're doing are completely different things.
Absolutely.
The person is never diminished in value.
No.
So that's the thing. Like,
yeah.
Okay, there was a high price that was paid for you, and we will never, on this side of heaven, truly calculate it, understand it, comprehend it.
Never.
It's never going to happen.
Right.
I'll probably be at Jesus's feet for the first millennium, going, I don't know why you're even dealing with me.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I can affirm. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so do we need to take a full like punch-on approach with the things that they're dealing with? Some people kind of like, okay, we're going to teach the Bible, right? We're going to stand where the Bible says to stand.
Yeah.
And we're going to hold tight the things that we need to hold tight. We're going to hold loose the things we need to hold loose.
Yep.
It is truly unlike any other time, I think, for what we do, in ministry.
Yeah.
Unlike any other.
Yep.
Some things are so unclear, and yet the attitude of, well, maybe they don't really want to hear this from us.
Yeah.
And then you have people like begging almost.
I was working at the church as a youth pastor, but I was also, I did all kinds of jobs. I was, bagging people's groceries. And just side note, don't ever tell a woman, hey, I checked you out the other day. When you were a checker. Yeah, don't do that. I did that.
Was that your first dad joke?
It may officially be my first dad joke.
Okay, we got it here live, folks.
Live right now.
His first dad joke. I checked you
Sorry,
out
I'm off the rails. I'm going to get us back. But, well, I was working in construction as well, full-time, and I was still part-time at the church. And I was working in Austin, like downtown.
Okay.
And I got on this one job, and older house, want to get it all remodeled. And I go in there, and we start busting stuff up. And what's cool is I started to develop relationships with the owners of the homes. I'm in their house. Like, they're still living there, right? And so one of the ladies, over time, I start to realize, like, this lady's lesbian. And, she made it abundantly clear to me.
I want to make a lot of jokes right now, and
you're good. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Melissa Etheridge.
Oh gosh,
posters or
no? There was none of that.
She's a great artist, man. She can play and sing.
None of that. Okay.
I'm a fan. I'm not hating.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, none of that. No, but she's asking me. Next thing you know, like, well, what's going on in your life? Like, so I'm building relationships with people outside the church. Amen. I have no context for like church, Christianity, all these things. And so I'm getting to know this lady, and we're actually building a really cool relationship. And I knew eventually, she'd start asking more questions. And we got to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm a youth pastor. And she just gave me this look, and I knew. And she goes, well, what do you think about, gays? And what do you think about lesbians?
I love it when they go right for the jugular.
Dude, and I'm like, I'm like, man, you put me in the hot seat. But what was cool is I could feel God's grace in that moment to share the love of Christ with her and the truth of Christ with her without it feeling like, here's judgment, here's I hate you. It wasn't a punch. It was a hug. It was a love. It was like, hey, I understand, and I get where you're at, and you may not fully understand this, but Jesus still loves you, cares about you, and all of these things, right? And so I've even seen in my own life where God's given me these opportunities, and is speaking the truth in love, right? Yeah.
But truth nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I had a similar encounter working. I had just met Heather. So, yeah, it's about 21 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was working a job, and I was talking to her on the phone, and I sat in a cubicle next to this top sales female. Beautiful. I'm not going to say I didn't have any clue that she was lesbian. And she was saying she was working in Hollywood, a certain part of Hollywood, and I made a derogatory statement. I wasn't a good believer, wasn't a mature.
Sure.
And she overheard it, so she waited until I got off the call, and she goes, "I resent that." Resent what? Where you were saying, because I actually live in that area. I was like, oh, okay. She goes, and I've watched you. She goes, you're a believer, right? You believe in Jesus and all that. And she goes, so why don't you just tell me I'm going to hell and get it over with?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She was very confrontational.
Straight for the jugular.
Yeah, but you know what? She had right to. I was a jackass,
Yeah.
I did not have any decorum. I was unaware. And she went after me. And I said, you know what? You're right. I said, I was a jerk. And I said, what I just did was not Christ-like at all. And yeah, I did make fun of that community, and it wasn't warranted. And I'm sorry. And, you have every right to feel the way that you feel about Christianity, because I didn't help you right now. Mm-hmm. But regardless of me being a bad witness, Jesus loves you. Mm-hmm. And I love you too. And hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate that here as we work together. And we actually became good friends.
Yeah,
and she was
awesome.
She was really sweet. And from that moment on, we were cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like part of ministry almost is undoing what a lot of people have done. Mm-hmm. A lot of bad perception, bad experience. Sometimes the saying is, what you didn't have a bad experience with Jesus, you had a bad experience with people.
Yep, that's it.
And that's the thing. I don't think it's that hard. If we can love people, that's enough. But at no time should we ever let people remain in danger. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to be aware. But my thing is like, okay, it's not about your lifestyle. All of us, apart from Jesus, are bound to hell. Yeah. 100%. Yep. You can't give enough and help enough little old ladies across the street to right what's wrong between us and God. And we're enemies. When you're like, no, I'm cool with Jesus. He's my buddy. No. You're an enemy, bro.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not born again and placed your whole trust and faith in his finished and atoning work, mm-hmm. you're an enemy.
Yep.
There's no in-betweens. So there's, on the one hand, we need to know really the danger mm-hmm. that we're in.
Yep.
But on the other, we have to know how ferociously we're loved.
Mm-hmm.
And how there was like no thing that would have kept him from giving himself if it was just you, or if it was just me.
That's good.
If it was them, that's a whole nother
whole
worms.
yeah.
But okay, so let me ask you this: where do you perceive it's going in terms of what you do? Like,
you mean
no? Like I'm not asking you to like work in the prophetic here, but maybe I am.
You're talking about society, culture,
No,
the world,
in what you do, like,
or me as a youth pastor.
You look at the landscape now, right? You see kind of how things are, and you've been made aware and introduced to a lot of challenges that you didn't, plan on and expect, and you've navigated through now. After taking all of those on as they've come, do you see anything ahead that you perceive like, I may need, this may be something we're going to run up against, right? Mm-hmm. Like Paul and everybody, they're getting ready to sail out. He says, hey, I perceive that, there's going to be a loss of ship and we're probably all going to die.
Yeah.
What do you see on the horizon as a challenge? Or maybe it could be a positive thing. Maybe you can say, hey man, I think we're about to run into like the greatest revival, that has ever been seen. It's all going to happen on what night do you host?
Encounter nights. It's coming up.
It's coming up. Yeah.
A couple weeks.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
No, but like seriously, what's the thing in your own prayer? And as you look ahead, you're just kind of like, okay, I can see that perhaps, the tide is shifted. Mm-hmm. It's, this is something we may see. It's an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's something you want to avoid. What do you see?
That's such a good question. And for so many years, it's you watch things unfold and you're like, wow, I didn't know it was going this direction, and it did. I said it earlier, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
Like you look back, you go, man, I didn't see that coming. And
sure.
so, who knows the plans of the Lord but the Lord himself, right? Sure. And I can say confidently, though, that I feel that there is a shift happening in the next generation of young people. And I can look at my own generation and see how where my parents abandoned me at 3 years old, my generation is taking that on a little differently. That's not, the fatherlessness is not as bad as it was. All of these things, right? And so, you can see some good in that, but at the same time, you can see a lot of political and unrest and a lot of just where is our society going? There's people who are like, societal collapse is coming and all these things, and it's like I don't know. I can't put all my eggs in one basket, right? But what I do know is, I just have to keep trusting that he's going to lead me, guide me in the season that he called me to. And man, it's hard. Faith is in the things you can't see, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's just. I know that sounds like such a Christianese answer.
No. But I think it's a fair answer. I mean, we, like I work in mortgages, right? And listen to some podcasts, things like that, just for educational purposes to kind of stay on what's happening. And they talk about this generation of home buyers. Like they're willing to work hard, they're willing to do this, and yet things are a bit harder for them than it was in previous generations to like achieve home ownership and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I was getting at, is like like I think of what happened with COVID.
Yeah, sure.
That disrupted
everything.
People's church. I want to say church attendance. It interrupted everything, but I think that there's some good opportunity there. I feel like the Bible says in Hebrews that he's going to shake the kingdom so that the things that cannot be shaken are what's standing. Mm-hmm. I think that definitely that was a a seismic movement.
Yeah.
Right. It kind of undid a lot of things in a way that maybe needed to be undone for a minute for us to see. There will be a separation between the sheep and the goats. No one likes to talk about that, but there will be.
It has happened.
And but then there's the other verses that say, someone sowed tares among the wheat.
Yep.
Well, what do? Well, we're not going to rip out the tares because we're going to hurt the wheat, right? We'll hurt the harvest. We're going to let them grow together. And then in the end, then we'll worry about separation.
Yep.
I think about it now. I feel like it's, there's all these guys that are constantly, house church is going to be the thing. Like, don't go to the buildings. Like, is that right too? No,
sure.
probably
Who knows?
not. Yeah, but I mean,
I've heard that.
But yeah, but it's like we gotta think in terms of, a lot of those little clarion calls, a lot of those little alarm bells, sometimes don't mean anything, but sometimes they do.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be prepared.
Sure.
So I was just curious about what your thoughts were on, like I don't know, have we fully come back from COVID? Like in terms of like church attendance, and in one way, like I remember 9/11, right?
Yeah.
Churches were packed, bro. After that,
Yep.
right? So people were just like,
it's almost as if something bad had to happen to have people.
It's a shame that it comes to that.
Yeah.
But people get that that moment where they're confronted with their mortality.
Yeah.
Like otherwise, we're like, I'll watch another reel and lose 2 hours of my life for nothing. It's easy to do. I can do it. It's not that hard.
It's such a miserable existence.
It is. But it's just a satiating thing, right? It's like you're not really. It's like I could eat something that has good nutritional value, or I could just eat junk. But for whatever reason, I believe that the same thing's happening, though it's not.
Sure.
How that can go. So I look at it that way. What are we up against, ahead? Like, I don't know if people are fully like, now people are like, hey, I'll stay at home. I'll watch church in my pajamas.
Yeah.
It's convenient. And there was a time when we needed to do that, but some people aren't coming back.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of companies right now that are going through the same thing. Like, hey, we need to go back to the office. And there's like people like going, I'm not coming back.
Well, and then you got your conspiracy theorists,
What do you mean by that?
I mean, people who just believe like the craziest stuff can happen. Or you see people doing stuff, like that's what's happening, and I'm like, yeah, but can you put all your stock in that one thing? And I hear, this person's never missed, they're always right. And then they miss it, It's like, oh, well, now what? You putting all your trust in that. Like I heard someone talking the other day about like Mark Zuckerberg is building a
underground thing in Hawaii or something.
Yeah, and they're like, there's going to be another pandemic, and he knows about it, and the elites and blah blah blah. And I'm like, you can live your life that way, but did Jesus live his life that way? No, and I can't live my life that way.
No, we can't.
No.
Well, and the other thing is. Some people don't like this, but America's not the New Jerusalem.
No, it's not.
The New Jerusalem will be the New Jerusalem.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's actually going to come out of heaven, and it's going to have walls too. Imagine that.
Yep.
So anyone who's there is written in the Lamb's Book of Life, and those that are not will not be. Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing people don't like.
Yeah.
There's some hard truths there, but I don't know how much time we have, or if we've kind of reached there.
We chatting it up.
We might be able to get a second episode out of this, or we'll do something. We'll see if you're willing to drink maybe some grape Fanta mixed with some Pepto-Bismol and some Tang with
Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, that's some Kool-Aid.
I didn't know you were going to go Jones on me, Jonestown. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything you want to that we missed? Perhaps burning desire.
No, I'm just stoked to be on here. It's awesome, it's fun.
Yeah, I think
this is my first official podcast.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
well, now I'm totally sorry I let you down.
No, this is good. I've enjoyed it. used to be on the other end of the camera and audio recording, so it's cool to be on this side. Absolutely.
Yeah, I should be on the other side, period. But but yeah, we are we had a good time.
Yeah.
We had a good time, and I'm pretty sure we can we can get in a lot more trouble here. But right now, I think you're still safe. Like, you're going to be
we're
welcome
good.
at church.
Yeah.
No one's going to run you out of town.
No.
No one's going to key your car at HEB. I may not be so lucky, but
Hey.
this is what I've signed up for.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Love it.
awesome.
Love it.
Very cool. Very cool.